Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our channel. This is Making Light to Humans Being. I'm Julie here. With me, as always, is Kate Foggo. And today you can see we have a very special guest. This is Sally Heidtke. She is the best-selling author of Be Infinite, this wonderful, awesome book that talks about her methodology as far as she works with her spirit guides for your own involvement and growth in this particular life, as well as many lives. So we're going to have a wonderful conversation with Sally. We're so excited to also call her friend because she also studied with us too, to a degree. But like I said, she has her own methodology, which is wonderful and so enlightening. And so here we go. We're going to talk to Sally today. Yay! Sally, welcome to our wonderful little show.
I'm delighted to be here. I watch every week, so I'm glad you could fit me in your busy schedules. I know that was a reason.
It's hard, Sally. It's hard.
Cool. So, Sally, tell us just a little bit about how you got started in all of this.
In any energy work or overall. Yeah. So I'm an engineer by training, usually very linear thinkers, very logical, not necessarily known and recognized for having a creative and intuitive side, but we really do. We just don't often show it. Mm-hmm. So I worked as an engineer for many years in a Fortune 25 company in the US and took an early retirement. I was just ready to do something else. And when I did that, I was a little bit at loose ends, and I was very interested in doing some spiritual studies. So I took a class on Reiki. If I back up about probably 5 years before I left, probably 20 years ago now, as I think about it, I've always been a student of spirituality. I found it very fascinating. And the opportunity when I had more time came to just simply digging in and looking a little more deeply. So I took a number of classes, pretty established protocols that were out there. That's how I actually found Danielle McKinnon's work after a number of years, and took some classes there and had the opportunity to meet you guys. And so it was really a curiosity and an interest in filling that part of me that hadn't really been exercised very much in my life with the career and life that I had led. So it was kind of an adventure to me. It was a really fun opportunity to do what I really wanted instead of what was expected or logical for me to do next.
Wow. And so the way that I understand it, you work very closely with your spirit guide team.
Right.
So how did that all come to be?
Well, it did not come easily. I know some people have this innate ability to connect with their spirit guides very early in life. They're very conscious of it. It's something they enjoy throughout their whole lifetime. Not me. I had to work long and hard to do it. It's like a muscle. Our intuition is like a muscle, and it has to be developed. Some people are naturally strong with it. I was a 98-pound weakling when it came to my intuition muscle, and so I really worked hard at it. Because I wanted it really, really deeply. And so that caused me to not give up. In the early days of first trying to connect with my guides, it felt really awkward to me and kind of unsettling. And so I didn't stick with it. But eventually it became very important to me to do that. And that reflected in where I put my energy and my time and my guides.
I really want to interrupt there because I think actually I didn't know that, Sally, about you. I knew a lot of things. I didn't know that. And I think that's really good for people to hear because like you, I was engineer based. It doesn't come easily to me. And it's funny in hearing you say that because I still don't feel that the guides, I'm okay doing it for other people. I'm fine with the animals. It's all there. It's all happening. But when it comes to trusting my own, oh shit, what do I do now? How do I calm myself down and get through this? How do I get that advice? How do I hear my guides? It doesn't come easily. And it's really seeing how you, even in the time I've known you, have evolved that relationship. Mm-hmm. That's really encouraging to me. But what's interesting, as you said that, was that you said it was determination because you and I both started muscle testing as the first thing.
Right.
And that's what I learned. I learned that through absolute sheer pig-headed determination. because my chickens were bullying each other. I knew I had to do the emotion code. I had to learn it. And I sat there and I fucking practiced morning, noon, night until I could do it, because I needed a solution. And that to me was the only thing that offered me any help at all, was this concept of energy healing to actually get their harmony back. It was all new to me. And that was sheer determination. And people say to me, I can't muscle test. I'm like, you're just not trying. No, I don't mean it like you're not trying. You just got to keep going. You've got to keep going as if your life depended on it. Because mine was, my chickens' lives depend on this. I have to learn to do this. And there was never any question in my mind that I would keep doing it until I did. And now, so knowing that I can do that with my guides is actually, even at this stage, for me, very comforting. So thank you.
Yeah, and necessity is the mother of invention, right? So when you know you really have to do something, you figure it out. My original motivation was financial. I had invested in this program, the Body Code, which Kate also does work with, and I had it. I thought, an expensive thing to buy, but you had a 30-day money back guarantee. So I thought, oh my gosh, I have 30 days to be comfortable with muscle testing. Because if I'm not, and I can't do it after dedicating myself, and I've dedicated myself almost full time to it, after 30 days, then I'll just, get my money back. So it was a little bit of the cheapskate in me also.
So you didn't do the emotion code first?
No, I did do the emotion code first, but there was no big financial outlay for it.
True. Yeah. I suppose I'd been doing that quite a while before they talked me into the Body Code.
There was like a month where I was doing both. So it was kind of at the same time as I think back. Yeah.
Wow. And look at you now.
Look at me now. I don't know what that says, but yeah, but now I am very comfortable. I am very comfortable with it. I still do, like so many people do, I question and I check to make sure that I'm not thinking I have different capability than I really do. I'm pretty reflective about it. I try to have integrity with it and not be, not.
And I like that as well. It's like you do obviously clearly get massive downloads, but you're not above having a wee check with a muscle test just to see that you're on the right track. And that again is something, because you clearly do get massive. You wouldn't have been able to write the book. You didn't do that by muscle testing, did you?
No,
but
no.
But you still, it's nice to see, if you like, because I'm of the very scientific, logical, got to get it right type thing. It's really comforting for me to see someone of your elevation who is still comfortable and happy and sees it as a legitimate way of communication. Because I actually see muscle testing as quite a clear, because you obviously there is obviously emotional investment, but in some things I find it a lot easier to get a yes, no, clear answer on something that if I tried to wait for a download, there's too much investment, shall we say, too many stories going on, whereas I can at least get started with a yes, I'm on the right track, no, I'm not, shut your face, Kate, no, concentrate, something really clear.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, because it's not a perfect thing, right? It's just like anything. I don't have perfect communication, decision making in my human life, right? And as I do spiritual work, there's sometimes I get it right and sometimes I'm less right. One might say even wrong on occasion. But
no, we'd never say that, Sally. Nothing's wrong.
But it's kind of part of the learning process, right? We're not intended to necessarily know every single thing perfectly. Life is still a mystery. So I think the best we can do is get some insights that help move us in the right direction at a pace that makes sense, that can really, where at the end of the day, we can really say, yeah, this is different than it was. This is fundamentally and foundationally different. And I have different capabilities that I can now enjoy as a result of it. And then the next thing will come, right? That is waiting to be uncovered or enjoyed.
So Sally, why don't we back up just a bit? Because I want to make sure people understand like your methodology and what exactly you're with, all the things that you've learned and how it's all come together with your guides. Walk us through a little bit what all that is.
Sure. So when I started doing energy work, some people call it energy healing. I don't feel like I'm healing anybody. I feel like I am helping them utilize their energy in a way that brings about change that they desire. But there's a lot of different programs out there. Many of you might have heard of the emotion code, body code that Kate and I were talking about, Reiki. There's healing touch. There's any number of modalities that have that are dedicated to helping people live a better life. And so I spent the first several years working to be an excellent practitioner of those established methods. I was really committed to that, and I was a good practitioner of those methods. For me, I found that some of the things that I cared the most about, that I got into energy work to help heal in my own life, weren't making the progress I wanted them to make. And it was frustrating because I felt like there were a lot of areas where it was working, and then there was this one or two areas that really mattered the most to me where I wasn't moving the needle at all. And so that was curious to me. And I actually was reading a book called Power versus Force by Dr. David R. Hawkins, an amazing book. And I'd read it several times. And one day when I was reading it, the words were just popping off the page to me. It was very, very odd and interesting. I thought, what is going on? And then it dawned on me that these were questions that were like being handed to me. And I thought in that moment, you know what? This is the beginning of an energy method. And I remember going, I never thought I would do that. But it was very clear to me that that's what it was, and that's what I was supposed to do. So of course I checked in with my guides, and they're like, yeah, let's go. And so it was really from that book and this notion of things like concepts like attractor fields that tend to dominate our behavior. And so for me, the area I was focusing on most intently through my energy work was my weight. And so the notion that there are attractor fields that are influencing my behaviors, my thoughts, my beliefs, everything, was a really powerful one, because I felt like it was so much a part of who I was that it was very hard to even recognize it. So that helped me kind of get a sense of how it came about. And so I started working with attractor fields. And the method I started developing it in 2019, right before the pandemic. And which was a great time to develop an energy method. Anytime's a great time to do it. But for me, there weren't a lot of distractions, right? Because we were kind of holed up and isolated in our own ways. And that's when it started evolving. And I do say evolving, it evolves all the time. It evolved this morning. I had a few more things that came in that gave me some interesting insight. So it's an area, like if the engineer in me would say, well, when are we going to be done? When is the scope complete? When do we put a, period at the end of the sentence? I'm very clear with this work that as long as I am growing and expanding, it will continue to grow and expand. It won't be done. So I'm really comfortable with that. There have been times where it got to a certain point, expanded, and then collapsed down to nothing. Right. And that was an interesting thing too, to go, wait a minute, all that work, from the last 2 years, and it's like, what? But it was like, it felt very right. It felt like, nope, that was just that plane of understanding. And now
And
we're
it's
at
like
a plane.
you explained that to me. We had sessions very early on, and you'd said about like snipping off the bunch of grapes. Like instead of picking off all these individual emotions, you can actually snip off the whole bunch of them, and that sort of concept of that. But it's funny because as you talk about this sort of breaking down into nothing, it's like I don't know what they're called, but those pictures that monks make, beautiful sand pictures, and then they just sweep them away. It's almost like that, but it's like trying to pull this back together. It's almost like you have to step through, because you taught me that with the grapes. Like until I learned that from you and thought, oh, there's a thing, I could do that. I couldn't do it because it had never occurred to me. Nobody told me. As soon as you said it and I believed I could do it, it then became available to me. So it's almost like you had to step through that process to get to the next level, and it's almost like it's never lost, but the actual picture you created is swept away, but because that served its purpose of getting you to where you need to be. That's such a amazing concept to think of, that because I don't know about anyone else, I find if I write stuff, even if it becomes irrelevant, I really don't like cutting it out of something because I've invested that time in it. There's so much attachment there. And yet this is a really good lesson that actually it served its purpose. The words have been said. They're out there. They're out there forever. You don't need to hold on to them.
And I think the detachment that comes along with that, Kate, can be a really helpful thing, because otherwise you have this sense of loss that just keeps happening, right? And it's like, no, it's really not lost at all. I find that the simpler things are, the more true they are. So if I'm getting really kind of complex and cumbersome, even with the way I have my method kind of outlined for me to follow it, it's like a mind map, like you kind of just go deeper and deeper. If it starts getting a little bulky, I always ask my guides, is there an opportunity for simplification and consolidation here? And
Do you ever get a no, Sally, for anything?
yeah, I do. I have gotten
Okay.
that for that. It's like, nope. But other times it's like, yes. And then I'll hone in on, okay, well, which is it, in this section or that section, and where is it and what goes in what? And then it's like, and then when it's done, it's like, oh, it feels better. It feels like it's more, hate to say orderly, because this is, spiritual work is not, I wouldn't describe that as orderly. There's an orderly component. There's structures to it that help us understand it, but there's so much that's nonlinear and kind of beyond our comprehension. So,
Wow.
yeah. So simplicity is like, if I'm heading in that direction, I know I'm heading in the right one, and I'm heading the right way.
Mm-hmm. So you were talking about attractor fields and how, and the notion of your weight. So
Mhm.
how did that all play out together?
Yeah, well, I would say it's still playing out, but attractor fields are kind of like gravitational fields. Okay, so we're all familiar with gravity,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're affected by it every moment of every day, but we seldom think about it, right? We don't think about, thank goodness gravity is here, keeping my feet on the ground and, blah, 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 so I don't float off into space. But it's a very real force that is affecting your life significantly. That's how the other attractor fields are.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found is you can have positive attractor fields and negative attractor fields. And it's the ones that are negative that I've typically been working on when it comes to my weight. And those negative attractor fields, they can happen anytime, but the when there's a really big event that's very difficult in my life, often there are multiple negative attractor fields that gain strength from that event and kind of keep things solidly where they are, so that it becomes a real challenge to move beyond it.
Can you
So
give
the
us an example, Sally?
Pardon?
Can you give us an example?
Well, yeah. So my weight is an outcome of all these attractor fields.
Mm-hmm.
So one that I talk about in the book, when I was 3, and there was another time when I was 39, and I outline, and there's a number of attractor fields. So for instance, my mom almost died when I was 3. She was giving birth to my twin sisters, and this is 1962. So she did not know she was having twins, even though she ended up delivering 15 pounds worth of babies, between the two of them. So, at that time, our whole family was in crisis, right? I mean, everyone ended up being fine, but there was a time that there was a lot of unknown. We didn't know if she would live. We didn't know, what was going to go on. But looking for that section actually in here, because I outline it. Attractor fields, just a minute. Oh yeah. So when I was 3, and I was, separated from my mom because she was in the hospital. I was farmed out to family members who were loving, but everyone was worried about my mom. And it was just this very tense time. But I had 7 weight-related attractor fields that formed at that time. One had to do with panic. One was vulnerability, grief, lack of control, unsupported, self-abuse, and worthless. So when your rock of your life, who was my mom, was all of a sudden not there, and I had been witness to, it was like a war zone, right? From her, she had been home when she started hemorrhaging and blah, blah, blah. So it was a really traumatic time. So there's all this stuff going on in my little 3-year-old mind, and those contributed to what is the outcome of my weight. even though they happened so long ago, right?
Oh, I was going to say, so when you say that these attractor fields, now, were they created or do you attach to a larger attraction field? Because presumably there's lots of people experiencing panic, loss.
Right. In this case, these are my attractor fields based
Okay,
on my experience.
Mm.
Mhm. But it
interesting.
doesn't only happen when you're young. Like when I
Yes.
was at age 39 and had this work crisis that happened, there were several others that came in. So I was essentially not doing well, aka failing in a very high profile role with this company that I was with for 24 years. It was not my pattern. It was like, what the hell is going on here? And so those some of those attractive fields were defensiveness, my efforts not received as intended, shock, shame, taken for granted, confusion, depression, conflict, heartache, and insecurity. Right. So let's just add those to the other 7. And then all the others that come along in onesies and twosies along the way. And pretty soon you have if you think about that gravity example, you have a pretty compelling field keeping me right where I was when it came to weight, despite my efforts.
Mm-hmm.
And since that time, I've, worked to kind of, you don't necessarily get rid of the attractive fields, but you move them along this continuum of vibrational frequency. So if 0 is very low vibrational frequency and 1,000 is very high vibrational frequency, you work to move them along up to the higher ends. And that kind of lightens that impact, that negative impact that it can have on the outcome that you care about.
Mm.
So that's pretty much what I work with people on, is raising their vibrational frequency of the issue and how it's playing out in their life.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Huh. And so there's a part in your book too that then talks about, I know one is a spiritual milestone that I wanted to ask about, as well as this turn of fortune. So these attractor fields kind of help highlight these key areas of your spiritual journey as well as your human life. Both,
For
right?
sure.
Yeah.
For sure. They're kind of they're the remnant of the whole thing. That's like how it stays with you is through the attractor fields.
Okay. Wow.
Through lifetimes.
It's a good question. Let me just check.
This is what we love about Sally. If
If I look off to my left, I'm usually like
I was
checking
going to say,
my
if you ever see Sally going like this, she's having a little conversation that doesn't involve you.
There. No, they don't really go through lifetimes. It's your consciousness and your experience in this lifetime.
Okay. So I would love to go into M fields, but I don't, because I have, and maybe we should talk afterwards, because I'd really like to put that in the references, because I've had questions from people who I can sort of talk about this and I go, I don't really know, Sally's, and they're like, well, where did you find this information? I was like, I haven't got that far in a book. Oh, I might have done that bit.
Yeah, that's not actually in the book, Kate.
Okay, I was going to say, because if you Google attractor fields, I don't know if I'm just not phrasing the question right, but I really don't get much satisfaction.
Yeah, and attractor fields really were defined in Dr. Hawkins' book.
Oh, don't make me read that book again.
I know.
And
I'm like,
yay,
I get to look at the book.
I hated it.
Yeah,
I
know.
loved it.
And that's why it's important to have so many different authors and books, because not everything, fits for everybody. So
don't get me wrong, there's so much in it, but there was bits of it where I did not like at all, like when he talks about layers of consciousness and he starts categorizing people, but it's a very old, it is, if anyone is interested in stuff like that, and I can see Sally's attraction to it because it's very precise and it's very logically organized, and what I love about him is his absolute 100% confidence that muscle testing can never be wrong, and you're sort of like, I've used it and it's been wrong. Okay, it's my application of it, but he's so convinced about it that he's happy to have a court of law that would like rely on muscle testing, which I think would be just brilliant. Like, what do we think? Guilty. It's like, but it's a fascinating book. But it goes very deep, and B, it's very detailed. But if you have it's funny because it's the sort of book. I see so much of how I used to be in you, Sally, and I'm trying to push away from that because I get sucked into detail and then I'd never get out again. So I'm quite deliberately separating myself from that level of detail because I
Well,
could live my whole life picking it apart.
and clearly, my method isn't like, we don't go into excruciating detail like that. My method is called attracting joy, however, right? And so it's paying homage in some ways to, that the origin of the whole thing. And really what we get into, if you have a session with me, is what are you going through, and what's not where you want it to be in your life, what matters to you in essence. And then we take a deep dive into, so what's underlying the issues that are bothering you. And so it ends up being a very conversational kind of understandable thing, even though the origins of it, are have a lot more behind it. But we don't need that to help people with the
No,
issues.
thank goodness.
Yeah.
Not everybody's got the brain power for that. But yeah. But what I don't want to interrupt Julie's. I love the fact that Julie actually has a plan, whereas I'm just like, nah.
Keep going. You're good.
Well, I was going to say, because when we met, because we met through Danielle's community, and I can't remember how you and I met specifically, but it might have been through Power versus Force book. I don't remember. But I knew that you were body code and that you were pretty high up in this concept. But you've always been, even in that community, a bit of a pioneer, because vast majority of us were animal communicators, and I know that was probably a source of some discontent to you, because you were somewhat overlooked. There you are, qualified, but you're not qualified in animal communication, and it was before there was a lot of the slick stuff that came up. I'm just interested, do you think that helped funnel you towards doing your own thing, the fact that you were sort of a pioneer?
Pretty much used to doing my own thing, because there's not a lot of people who do energy work, period. And I live in a very small community in northern Michigan, so it wasn't like I had a peer group. So I was excited to just be working with other fun people who like working on intuition. And it was that first class on intuition that was part of the soul level, what became the soul level communication, intuitive coaching path.
Yes.
Where we met. And that was a time where my what I called my daily practice with my guides really got started, where I was like, no, this isn't something to be pulled off the shelf for a special occasion. This is something that I want to be part and parcel of my everyday throughout the day.
That's
So
interesting.
yeah.
How did you make it?
Pardon?
How did you make it part of your practice? How do people start?
Determination again, just really, really wanting it, because I kept saying, gee, I wish I would know, I could know what my dream meant. And I would say, wait, Sally, you can know more about what your dream meant. You just have to ask the questions. And so finally I'm like, oh, come on. It's like, when you're at work and you have a computer problem and you call the help desk and they say, turn it off and then turn it on. It's that automatic answer that used to always drive me crazy, but it was always correct. And so it's like, no, I want to have that kind of access to it. I want to have the turn it on and turn it off, ask it whenever I have a question, whenever I have an issue. So why wait for another resource to tell me that when I already know that, and just spend more time on it. So that's what got me really, really digging.
And what did you do? What actual, so if somebody says, right, that's it, I need a spiritual practice, I'm going to, is it as simple as setting time aside every day, or do you do?
I think there's lots of different ways people go at it. For me, it was reinforcing time and time again with the universe that I wanted this relationship with my guides. So I kept asking questions. And I wasn't always trusting the answers I got, right? Because is that just what I want? That's a common thing you hear from people who are learning muscle testing or whatever. I think I just got that because that was the answer I wanted. Well, maybe the answer that you wanted is the real answer. Open yourself to that possibility and celebrate and move on. But so I just kept working at it, and kept working at it, meaning I'm having conversations and I'm saying, okay, guides, I'm feeling a little funny about asking about this, but is this, should I take this route or that route? It might be, it could be something simple in my daily life, or it could be, can you give me help with this, conversation I just had with my husband? I'll just like put it out there. Even if I don't receive something back, I'm putting it out there and getting used to putting it out there. And then eventually you'll start to get things that come back. You'll get a word or a feeling of comfort, or, just feeling better for having said something about it versus letting it churn repeatedly in your own psyche. So
that's such good advice, because I think especially for me, like in the muscle testing world, where you're asking a question that's not a one-word answer, and it's like I can ask and ask and ask, and I don't know how to listen. And actually what you're saying is you don't actually have to even try to listen, just put it out there. And actually we all know now, although it's still very hard for me to remember that, is that the listening doesn't have to happen right at that moment, because quite often at that moment you're still wrapped up in the question. You can't hear the answer.
exactly.
Whereas, so what you're saying is if I just put it out there, it can find its way to me, maybe later on in the day, maybe through something else. It's not like, because I find if I go like that, that's I'm not going to get an answer, because I can't actually keep my brain tends to then just reiterate the question over and over and over again, as if by asking it harder I'm going to get an answer quicker, when really I need to switch tracks completely in order to receive the answer.
And I think when you're asking, you're putting it out there that I need help. Hello, I need help. And so often we're reluctant to do that because we think we ought to be independent and self-sufficient, and we have the answer within, we just have to work harder to get it. And it's like, sometimes you just need to ask for help. And I did originally feel that my guides needed to have a conference and get back with me. That was just my corporate way of like, no one ever gives you a straight answer right off the top. Of course, this is going to take time. And it's like, for me, what I learned was if I got quiet and stayed with the question, I actually did get an answer. I would get a sense or a knowing of, whatever it was. And then I would just go, is this about trust? And then I'd get a sense of yes. Oh. And then I could go on my own. That was enough for me to then go to the next step of whatever I needed to do. So don't, your guides are like, they are waiting for you to ask and to listen. But sometimes
I must admit, I never worry that they're not there 100% for me. My problem is I can't hear them, because I'm on to the next question. I'm very much in a, tell me now. Oh, nothing's happening. It's the same as communicating with wild animals, because I know it's hard. After 30 seconds, I'm like, oh, it's not working. I'll do it later when I've got more time.
But that's the thing. I don't necessarily think it has to be hard, because part of what I believe in this is that guides are here as an answer to a prayer, okay, a request for help. And actually, they're always there even before you ask for that. But and so I always figured that, I didn't always figure, I eventually figured that if this is a divine structure that's intended to help us, I don't think there would be all these gates and difficulty to do, because the point is that, you ask for help and it's here. Now let's use it and put it to good work. And that's where a lot of, the hard work comes in. So I think it's helpful sometimes to change our mindset around this is a complicated thing, and only if you have your book to the left and your prayer beads to the right, and it's the right phase of the moon, and you have sufficiently grounded and cleared yourself, can you possibly ever hope to get an answer of any kind from your guides. It's like, no, I don't believe. If you believe that, that is how it will show up. But if you believe this is a natural process and it's available to you, it will show up as a natural process.
I actually don't think it's complicated, but I suppose I do have this belief that my mind is not still enough to listen, because my mind is off trying, I'll ask a question and then my logical brain is actually trying to work it out in real world material fact as well. While I wait for that answer, I'm actually going to go off and try and fix it myself in the physical world. And I know that,
What I find is if I'm not hearing it, I will say, sometimes I'll go, I didn't get anything. Did you, and I'll ask my guides, did you give me an answer? Did you answer yes? Oh, could you do it again? And could you give it to me louder?
Okay, it's
Not should I be
interesting.
quieter? Could you please be louder? So it can be that kind of thing. Or, and then I might ask 15 times if I'm not getting it. If I happen to be particularly obtuse that day in connecting with my guides, I will just keep asking.
Okay.
Because I don't know what the block is. I don't know what's getting in the way. Is it this question in particular? Is it the phase of the moon? I don't know what it is, but I know there's an answer. I just don't know what it is. So sometimes I just have to be a little more creative about how I get to it.
And so for me, connection to my guides, I'm learning, like you're saying, Sally, it's always there. I have to give myself I'm finding I have to give myself some grace that when I hear a word, or I have a knowing, or I get a lot of like physical sensations in my chest or in my gut, if it's which way, if I'm asking like which way should I go, I can tell in my gut, like that's the good way or that's the not so good way. So I have to give myself some grace that I'm actually always connected. What's been interesting is, as you guys know, I have COVID right now. And you made a comment. So Sally's in our book club as well. So you made a comment in book club about how check in with your guides as you're going through this process of how connected you are with them. And what's interesting is, before I saw that comment, I had actually been doing that from the moment I didn't feel well to when I tested positive. I kept checking, like, are you there? Are you there? Are you there? And they were there. They never left, clearly, right? What was interesting was how hard, for me, what my experience has been is how hard I've had to work to get my, like, almost like my vibration up so that I can, because when I'm not sick, I can hear them, or when I'm in a session, they're right here, in my face. The animals are too. But as I've gone through this, I've done a couple of sessions, and it's like I have to work that much harder to raise my vibration to be able to really hear them as clearly as I have been able to, which is,
Yeah, that was my experience too, Julie,
okay.
because I've had COVID twice. And the first time it was a really rough kind of ride. And what my guides told me in the aftermath of the whole thing was the body had to divert so much energy to fighting the virus, that it had to be prioritized in that way. So my spiritual connection actually went down to like 1%. Like I couldn't for the life of me for some period of time connect in. I kept trying and trying. And what feels different, right? When you're used to doing that pretty effortlessly. And what it told me is how much energy it really takes to do it in a healthy state. It still takes a lot of energy to do. We're just very accustomed to the level it takes. But when that's not there anymore, because it's being prioritized elsewhere, it's a whole different thing. So I think it's great that you could even do it to that level because you're still, I think you're still dealing with the COVID piece a little bit, right? But
A little bit, yeah. Which leads me back to this notion of trust, which is a whole chapter in your book as well. Because for me, trust has been coming up again and again of late, the last couple months, with animal messages for within the last couple of months, as well as from my guides. But this trusting that it's all going to be okay, from a spiritual connection, that's going to, but also that trust that my body knows what it needs, and allow it to take the time that it needs to heal, and all of that type of stuff too, which I know is a little bit different than the chapter in your book. But it is, for me, this whole notion of trust is just really being hit home right now on so many different levels. So
maybe that's why you needed that break, like, where the connection is not automatic, to hammer that home.
Well, I think our environment does not encourage trust, right? So everything around us is like kind of encouraging us to not trust. Oh, you should believe this, or wouldn't this be awful? That's what you should worry about right now. And if you're trusting your guide,
sounds
Yeah, you're trusting your higher self, you're trusting who you are, what you know to be true. It is it provides kind of a fortress against some of that attack.
Mhm.
And so so that's what the trust part in here about is like trusting that our essence, our spirits, right, our wholeness, our soul, trusting our body.
And that's such a good message right now, because I don't, I'm sure it's the same in the States, but just everywhere in the world at the moment, everything, if it's not commercial advertising that your whole house is going to fall down or your teeth are going to fall out unless you buy this product, or, you know, if it's not that, it's on the news, a crisis, this, it's like, it's almost like there's a feeling of fear everywhere. And obviously in the not corporate, what's the word? Corporate world, spending world, I can't remember, consumer, you know, that's all about you're not safe or you're not good enough unless you have this and that. It's like everything. And so to remind ourselves, actually, we don't need any of this shit, we're fine. You know, it's a really good message.
Well, and what it says is instead of putting your energy over there, put it over here, because it still takes energy, right? It's not just like, oh, everything's fine, don't worry about a thing, don't, you know, don't do anything. It's like, no, there's a lot of stuff we can do and should do, but do it consistent with that. Do it consistent with the higher vibration part, versus staying kind of in the mire.
Yeah, or disconnected is like I like to call it too.
Yeah.
I'm very conscious of time. I was just because I don't know what time it started, but I just wondered if oh, it's gone completely. I was just going to say about it's about the book. Like, what can people expect from your book if they buy your book? What can they expect? What happens? Can anyone just pick it up and learn this stuff?
Yeah, so the book is not written for intuitives. It's written for the general public. It's generally targeted toward an audience, I say, generally middle age, as I define as 50 plus or minus 30, you know, years. So if you're 15,
everyone, then
this isn't a book for youth, although there's some good things in it. I just think that so much of it is based on the experiences we have, and the more experiences we have, the more sense it makes and the more that we can engage differently. But that's just my current thinking. So what it is really, this is so are you, I don't know if you're familiar with the story, Kate, being that you're not from the US, but there was a exploration, an expedition that had to do with finding the best water route, the best practical water route from the middle of the US to the West Coast. And it was done in the 1800s by Lewis and Clark. Okay. And so this was when they were exploring territory, right? They didn't know what they were going to find, how they were going to do it. And this is kind of like my finding the West Coast. This is me saying I'm in the Midwest, which is exactly where I am. And I need to find the best route, practical route to spirituality, to finding the, you know, to that inner adventure, that inner exploration. And so this is kind of my field guide to that. It's me telling you the big things I see along the way, the big structures like the turn of fortune, the spiritual milestone, some of the other things we've been talking about that's kind of new work. You won't, like, if you Google that, you won't find it anywhere else, okay? Because it's here. But that's what I discovered along the way. And then some of the nuances along the way, just like when they went, they said, oh, there's a mountain, oh, there's a river, oh, there's a valley. Oh, and oh my gosh, look, I've never seen this spider before, or this is an unusual plant. So you've got the big scale and the small scale stuff. And that's what this is in the quest to basically find your life purpose, acknowledge the barriers that are making that difficult at the moment and throughout your whole life, and seeing some hidden patterns that haven't emerged yet. In retrospect, you can see them once you know, and then what to do about it. Because part of what we're here to do is we are here to be infinite. We are here to not be mired down with all the difficulties. Those are great teaching tools, but there's a way through it. And so this gives you some perspective on how that's set up structurally and what you can do about it. That's the engineer in me, while all recognizing it's completely nonlinear. And there's a lot that's not there. It's just like, here's a snippet of like, this is me getting from Michigan to South Dakota. Okay. And I'm working on how do I get from South Dakota to Washington State, what is now Washington State. So it's an ever evolving process. So this is the route that I took. And I'd mentioned a little bit earlier that I'm liking this whole notion of spiritual adventurer because that's what I feel like I am. I'm not looking at doctrine. I'm not doing research on the questions I have other than through my guides, because these are questions that are unique to me and from my experience, but they also may have a universal component to them, right? Not the whole thing, but a component. And so I recently had put on my website that I was a spiritual adventurer. And then I was kind of playing with that last night, and I defined what a spiritual adventurer is. So I'm going to share that with you. It's someone who has spiritual curiosity and openness and an uncommon inclination to think beyond the material and to experience the transcendent. And the transcendent here is really beyond the outside of our ordinary experience and understanding. And that's certainly what this book is. It's outside of my normal, ordinary understanding. It's opening up things like the spiritual milestone. And my spiritual milestone is yearning. And it's the undercurrent, the hidden undercurrent that has been the drumbeat or the heartbeat of my life ever since my turn of fortune at age 3. And so knowing that and working through that just opens up different benefits and possibilities. And there's 4 benefits that actually come from completing the spiritual milestone. One has to do with alleviating suffering, another with joyfully expanding towards self-love. The third has to do with opening up creativity, and the fourth is maintaining or building the divine connection. And so those are 4 benefits, and all of those for me, I'm like, yes, sign me up, because, you know, even just one of them can be really life-changing and a significant shift in the trajectory of where you're going in a way that feels good. It feels good, not just, uh-oh, how did I get here? What am I going to do? But no, this is where I want to be. This is where I need to be. And so I think that's what the book helps you do. There's a lot of personal stories in it. And a lot of people who've known me for a long time have said, I didn't know any of that. So that's been interesting and helpful for me to relate it in my own life. And as I've had some of my readers come back and say, well, I went through it. Now I'm going back through it and figuring out my own stories along the line instead of reading what yours were.
And what can people expect at the end?
Well, there's 2 things. There's a definition of what being infinite means in the book, and there's 8 things, and it's really a beautiful, beautiful section of the book. And so I won't go into that right now, but I can read one. Let me just read one that my guides say would be a little taste of that. So the last one is, forevermore we see grace in all things and welcome their light to expand our own. So seeing grace in all things is not a place where I normally operate from. I normally operate from a judgment place. And so that is a big thing in and of itself. And recognizing by recognizing that, it brings light into my own life. So that's one of the 8 parts of what it means to be infinite. There is more that's coming beyond this. In the book, there's a little thing you probably can't tell here, but it says explore your wholeness at the very top. And when I was looking at the book cover, I got the proof of it, and I was like, I need something on the top, because it looked really unbalanced. And so I asked my guides, is there something that should go on the top? And they said, and I just got immediately, explore your wholeness. So I was like, ooh, okay, I like that. So I put that on there. And what I'm finding is that there's 5 levels of spiritual growth, because we're here on earth to grow, grow and develop, right? We're not here to be stagnant or to go backwards. Although, you know, that can happen too. And so there's 5 levels of spiritual growth, and actually be infinite gets you to the 2nd level. So the
Oh.
first level is a level of discernment. If you work on being infinite, it gets you to the level of love. The next levels are what will be covered more in the next book, but that gets you to the from the level of love to the level of joy, from the level of joy to the level of peace, and from the level of peace to the level of enlightenment. So
Hmm.
there's different things that kind of unfold that take us through that. That ascension is too like, ooh, a word, but through that increase in our spiritual growth here on earth, which is what we're here to do.
And this, so to some degree, this is in Dr. Hawkins' book. There is the ladder of, so this really to some degree follows that aspect of it, or
Like the map of
builds it.
consciousness you're thinking of.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
It does. What I find though is there's like a okayness at each level. There's like you can be at the low level, like the first level is a level of discernment. And most of us in our lifetime spend essentially 100% of our time at that level of discernment, trying to make sense out of things, trying to decide what's good and bad. It's a very human consciousness kind of thing, right?
Mhm.
Just trying to figure it out. And so, and there's different levels even within that, right? You can be at a really low vibrational frequency in that, or you can be at a higher vibrational frequency. When you move to the level of love, which by the way, only typically happens in the last couple of months to days before a person passes away, when the hold of the ego loosens enough, right, that we can rise up a bit.
Mhm.
And and so it's like, man, the more we can do that while we're here, right? If we can raise in our spiritual consciousness while we're here, there's a lot more that we can enjoy, create, share.
Mhm.
There's just it just opens up a different dimension to the life that we're leading. And so that's why I'm a big proponent of, and the linchpin of the whole thing is the spiritual milestone. Like you can't really get there without completing your spiritual milestone. But the good news is that's available to everyone. There's 12 different kinds of spiritual milestones. Mine is yearning.
Mhm.
There's things like shame and lacking and anger and all kinds of things. And so
Sorrow.
yeah. So, I mean, we've all got one, and none of them are like, here's my calling card that we get show with pride to people. Look, I'm a yearner. You know, it's like, oh, I don't want people to know I'm a yearner. I want them to think I've got my act together. I want them to think that it's
Right.
all good. They can count on me.
Yeah.
And so we go through great lengths sometimes to hide that aspect of ourselves when
Mhm.
really it is the thing that will bring us some freedom down the road and allow our spirit to grow as it's intended to do.
Yeah.
So that's the power of the book, I think, really is in understanding these things, especially the spiritual milestone, and working through that. You can do that very naturally. That's part of what we're here to do.
Mhm.
But it's generally a journey of many, many lifetimes.
Yeah.
And I just say there's no time like the present, right? So it's a great way to help you focus if that's what you're interested in doing, and growing at a rate that you is very easy to underestimate, but can change everything.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, so my milestone's anger, which I'm still trying to understand all the things around it. And yes, it's not a calling card because who wants to say, hi, I'm angry, especially as a woman.
Yeah.
Don't want to show. Um, I will say though that having been through your methodology with you, done sessions with you, and having read this book twice, and I know now after to have this conversation, I'm inspired to read it again because I know more is going to come from it. It really is. It's such I cannot express how helpful it is as another tool almost in the toolbox to look at the thing, to look at yourself holistically and what are you here to do and how can you move forward? How can you be infinite?
Mhm.
It's really super helpful. Yeah.
It's a fun conversation to have individually, but it's also a great conversation to have as a group with trusted folks. At our book club on earlier this week, there were three of us, and we kind of went through kind of a deep dive on that with folks, and it was super fun and super interesting. And often, we hold our spiritual cards very close to the chest. We're very, private about that, particularly if we're not in an established religion,
Hmm.
right? If we're spiritual but not religious, it's like, how do I even explain this to people? How do I even engage? So often we don't. We just kind of keep it to ourselves and kind of go about our business. But there's a lot to be said for the chapter in the book that's called Gathering Support. That's actually my favorite chapter in the book. And I thought, oh yeah, I can write a chapter on this. But then I thought, oh my gosh, this is such an important thing for me right now, because it's not just about me, sitting at my desk doing some things. It's about engaging with what I'm learning and what I'm doing in a way that lifts others up, and then I get lifted by that as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's a small book, it's like 100 pages basically, and but it's kind of mighty. There's a lot of stuff in there that is deeper than you might expect, because it's easy to say, how hard can that be? I'll be through that in the afternoon, and maybe you will be, but it might be something that you end up coming back to.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think my personal opinion, to do it justice, you're going to want time with this. There are worksheets in it too, that I find super helpful.
Right. That was mostly to help people who don't have intuitive skills, but it also helps people who do have intuitive skills to understand it at a deeper level versus just asking the question and learning what their spiritual milestone is. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So if someone wanted to find your book, Sally, where are the best places to find it?
You can get it on Amazon. You can get it at Barnes and Noble online. Okay. Not at the bookstore. They can contact me through my website, sallyheidtke.com. The benefit if you buy it from me directly is you get it signed and hugged, and I send it back to you wherever you are. So if you want that, you can get it through me directly, but Amazon and Barnes and Noble.
We'll put it all in the notes as well.
Yeah.
Is that a good place to stop? Because I could talk all day about this stuff. We'll have to have you back, Sally, because there's always so much, but I don't know how long we've been on for. This is the thing. We need a big stopwatch.
I know. I think we've been on for an hour just talking about it. And I know we could go on so much more. Yeah.
Will I sign us out then?
Yes, please.
So that's been amazing, Sally. It's such a privilege to have you here. And those of you that I know that Julie and I reference our book club occasionally, but it's amazing because we're actually reading this book in a book club with the author. I mean, how cool is that? It's just, and it's another thing, it's just incredible that the people around us, like Sally, that you're now an author, you're now an established author. It's just incredible and really inspiring for us to have you with us. And it's been a really lovely conversation, and I hope we can have you back sometime.
Well, thank you so much, and it's been a real pleasure. And I think Julie said in the beginning that best-selling author. I think that's best-selling in our book club. But I'll take that and hope, use that as a premonition for what may happen ahead.
We're setting up the tractor field, Sally.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. No, that's wonderful. And thanks so much. I always enjoy talking with you guys, and it's been a real pleasure to dig into this a little bit more today.
Awesome.
I know I've said this to you before, Sally, but I knew you were articulate, and obviously we spent time with you, but actually when I read it, there was a little bit of green envy. I was like, this is really well written. This is, it's like, it is. I mean, I expected nothing less, but I was still sort of like, I really like, it's a really nice book to read. It's very coherent, and it's the words are well chosen. It has a nice rhythm. It's not just, it's a nice book to read, and as well as all the other benefits it has. So that said, thank you very much, Sally Heidtke. We'll put all the details in the notes. I'm Kate Foggo. With me is Julie Hurt, and together we are Making Light and a guest. You can find us on Facebook. I was going to say Twitter, but we're not on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. You can sign up to subscribe here in YouTube, or you can sign up in Facebook. We would really like more subscribers in YouTube, please, because that will get us on the map for other people. So if you've enjoyed this episode, please do sign up and forward it on to your friends. And if you have any questions for Sally, we'll put all the details down there, and we'll encourage you to get the book. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time, and Happy New Year.